listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm hoping you're all doing fantabulous. And for those of you out there who don't know what that means, it's fantastic and fabulous, put together twice as nice. It's a double niceness, double fantastic and fabulous and just wonderful. Are you doing fantabulous today, Veda?
Oh, absolutely. Staring at your nice shirt with a pride flag. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love the pride flag. It just means so much to me. A lot of people have a misunderstanding of the flag. They think it's just gay pride. It isn't. It was originally when it was created, it was originally meant for meaning everyone's included. So that's why I love it so much. My guest today is DFL Senate District 57 Chair and member on the State Executive Committee and Chair Emeritus of the DFL Environmental Caucus, Veda Kanitz. Hello, Veda. Welcome to the Downright Upright Show.
Hey, Philip. Good morning. How you doing? Actually, afternoon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, right. It's so hot today, isn't it?
It's going to be a gorgeous day. It's not 97 plus, you know.
It's going to be better than
80s, yeah. I think it's going to be nice.
All right. Well, it's been really hot the last few days, and I've been sweltering, and I'm living in the air conditioning. That's what I'm doing. So before we talk about your duties as caucus chair, would you tell us a little bit about your beginnings? So where you were born, raised, went to school, and anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I grew up in a small town, East Troy, Wisconsin. My dad had been a farmer turned factory worker in order to support his 5 kids. Mom had a degree in English, minor in history, and was basically a stay-at-home mom. And so I grew up in a great small town where everybody knew everybody. But it was during a rather just time of unrest in our country where the Vietnam War was going on, and we were listening to Nixon's lies night after night on TV. So being political is like in my blood. I grew up with a New Yorker mom who would be, cussing at the television, but also writing to Bill Proxmire and other representatives from Wisconsin, and got to know them well. They'd stop by our house and answer her. So from the beginning, I was brought up with democratic values. Mom often spoke about how hard Dad worked and how little he made compared to the CEOs of the company, and how just unfair it was.
Yeah, but that was, in the 60s and 70s.
Correct.
When you worked, it was the CEO maybe made 5 to 10% more, 10 times more than the worker. Now today it's like ridiculous. Now it's just so bad. So we were complaining back then. Imagine if she was, if you were growing up in this society, in the modern times,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Well, and then the company closed and moved to Mexico for cheaper labor.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But Dad, with that farm mentality of workmanship, never stopped working, and at like 55, 65, learned how to be a cook. He had never cooked before, but he learned how to be a cook, and did that in my brother-in-law's restaurant.
Cook or just
Italian restaurant.
Stop, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Italian, so I love Italian food.
It was wonderful.
What's his specialty? Do you remember?
Spaghetti sauce, yes.
The sauce.
Except it was hard to scale the recipe down from cooking for, hundreds of people to just for the family. But he'd pull it out and do it.
Yeah, wow. I remember my mother, God rest her soul, was a great cook. And I would stand there over her shoulder and watch her make sauce. And there was a difference between sauce and gravy. If you were Italian, gravy had the meat in it, and the sauce was just a regular marinara sauce.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
I could talk about food all day, but initially, how did you become involved in DFL politics? What precipitated that?
So again, I grew up in a political house, and when I had young kids, you're very busy as a mom. I had 4 children, and so didn't have a lot of time for volunteer work, but would always go to caucus and, was a delegate at conventions and things. But I got more involved, really learned the power of grassroots, I think, when the Vote No marriage amendment thing came out. That just motivated me to get more involved. Through my church in Burnsville, Open Circle Church, we became a phone calling location. I helped put on and organize the first county-wide event for that. So just did a lot of volunteer work, and then I started to learn that, hey, I can train other people, explain this to people, talk to people, learned how to speak. I'm a science teacher, so data and facts are something that come to mind a lot, but that's not what touches people. You have to speak from the heart. And that, that defeating that marriage amendment happened because we talked about love. Love is love. Everybody wants the right to marry someone they love in front of their family and their community. Yeah. It wasn't about legalities or discrimination. It was really about love. And that spoke volumes. And of course, we were one of the first states, I think the first state to pass it, right? Or to defeat that amendment. And then went right on to...
I think we're the first state to do it by plebiscite rather than the Supreme Court. Is that how it went?
It was a vote. It was a constitutional amendment vote.
So, it was a vote. The people voted.
Yep, they voted. And then shortly after, right, we had marriage equality. And then shortly after that, in August, one of my sisters married her love, and I never cried so hard at a wedding. It was amazing.
Well, believe me, I mean, if you went to our wedding, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. First of all, because I never, I'm an older gay man, never thought in my entire life. First of all, we were demonized. I was in the closet for a while. I mean, it was just awful. Then AIDS came along, and then we were like pariahs, we went through all of this discrimination. So I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to get married and that I would be recognized as a citizen. And next thing you know, it happened. It was just surreal to me.
Pure joy.
Absolutely.
Pure joy. So that kind of gave me the idea that I had a voice that could make a difference. And I by no way take credit. I mean, this was a huge movement, and we came in and just, the wonderful organizing used it, and it paid off. But then I got more involved. Climate change is always been a huge issue for me. Where I teach, I started a student group and worked with the school on lowering their carbon footprint and getting grants to do different things to help with recycling and composting and other things. Had always just been active in environmental organizations, joined Citizens Climate Lobby, went to DC several times to speak to legislators from all over the country, Republican and Democratic, about the need to act on climate. And
it's an existential threat to our life. I mean, people think it's a joke. I mean, if you look around, look at the temperatures. I think we've reached the highest temperatures in history of the world. Recorded history. This past month.
Yeah, we've broken records.
We broke records, and there's either flooding, drought. There's extremes in climate, and then you have Republicans saying, that's all fake, and that's just not happening. And it's kind of bothersome to people with common sense.
Yes.
It's like, like if I show you this and say, this is a magic marker, and a Republican will say, no, that's a pencil.
Right.
It's like you're looking at it and you see it's happening, and you hear from scientists it's happening, but they're telling you it's not. It's very insulting to my intelligence. I don't know about you.
Well,
but
you can't add all that CO2 to the atmosphere that we've added without changing the climate.
Yeah.
It's physically and chemically not possible, and we've known that for a long time.
Correct. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, moving on to the next question. When did you become SD 57 chair, and how did that come about? So when and how?
So when I first started to get more involved in local politics, I went down to New Prague in Belle Plaine, which was my Senate district, and became the vice chair there, and then eventually the chair. And that was great. But I live in Lakeville. My kids went to Lakeville High School, so I was driving down to New Prague and Belle Plaine and associating with people who were great, but it wasn't really felt like my community. And then with redistricting, the part of Lakeville, all of Lakeville and Newmarket Township where I live became part of a new Senate District, Senate District 57. And they needed a chair. And I stepped up and said I would run and did some recruiting of other people to run with me. So I have an amazing vice chair, Phil Wilson, and other people in our group that are very active and just ready to make change in Lakeville.
Are you aspiring to higher office maybe someday? Maybe do something political, like run for representative or Senate or I don't know, a school board or something like that. Is that in your future, do you think, or are you going to stay with doing this for a while?
Very possibly. As one representative pointed out to me, with all the hours that you are volunteering for the DFL, it wouldn't be more work for you. It would be just a different kind of work, to run for office. But it's not in my immediate plans. I'm finishing up a teaching career here. I've been a teacher for 43 years.
Science teacher,
high school. And we'll see. I'm not really sure what's next. I might turn more to nonprofit work. There's a lot of great environmental organizations out there. Thank you. Yeah,
you're amazing.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, good luck.
Keeping my options open.
Exactly. Keep every door open.
Oh, always. And new experiences lead to things that I never imagined I'd be doing.
Absolutely. So being chair emeritus of the DFL Environmental Caucus, you are a climate advocate, as I am. We've been discussing climate before. What are some things that concern you when it comes to climate change and its effects on the environment? So for me, it's like, the obvious things like, where farmers don't have enough water to keep their plants alive because the climate's changing so drastically that the drought is killing all their crops. There are parts of the country where there's flooding and people's houses are getting ripped apart and taken away. And I could go on, but can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, this is a really deep question, and it's very multifaceted. Of course, climate change is affecting our ability to grow food, to feed people. It is affecting just the ability for people to survive with all these heat waves we're having. There's been a record number of deaths in Europe and here.
Yep.
And, of course, if you have air conditioning, you've got an escape. But many people work outside. They're farming. They're migrant workers. They're construction workers that don't get the relief or don't have air conditioning at home. I heard in Europe only like 10% of the houses have air conditioning.
Really?
It's like flip that here, right? And they're not used to those heat waves. It's not normal for them. So they're really suffering. And then when we start to look at these climate tipping points, that's really scary to me, the idea that we could unleash the permafrost in the Arctic or in Antarctic and other places, like Alaska, and drive all that methane up into the atmosphere and then game over. Or just what's happening with the Gulf Stream, right, slowing down, and predictions that it could stop, by as early as 2025, or could be, 2095. It's a difficult thing to predict, but all of that should cause us all very grave concern. I have grandkids, and I want them to experience the same, love of nature that I have and be able to enjoy the outdoors.
When you mentioned your grandkids, you had a tear, like almost like your eyes started welling up, because I see how much love you have for them. And I don't have any children, but if I did, and my friends' children, I think about all the time. We are destroying the planet for the future generations, and we have some people who claim it's not happening. That bothers me a lot.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I just was tabling at a booth in Elko Newmarket after the parade, and people were telling me, "Oh, that's a bunch of hoo-ha, it's all hype," and
Really?
I'm like, it's just part of a cycle, how the Earth's tilt changes, and I'm like, Well, yes, I teach science, I understand, but those are, 100,000-year cycle, and this has nothing to do with that, right? This is human cause. There's no other way to explain it. You simply can't add the amount of CO2 we've added to the atmosphere and not change the climate. And, people say, how do we know? Well, we have ice core records, we have other proxy data. So if you actually start to study paleoclimatology, and you see that all of these facts, whether it be from ice core records or pollen or sediment studies, they collaborate each other. They tell the same story. And that's why the science is so strong. I mean, scientists would love it if there were another explanation, if this were just a blip. But when you start to look at probabilities of the number of heat events we've had, or the number of floods and droughts and the hurricanes that grow from 1 to 5 in 24 hours, I mean, there's no way these things could happen without our changing climate.
Yeah, and you know what, Veda, I was watching a program, I think it was on PBS, if I'm not mistaken, but they were talking about coral reefs off the coast of Florida. There's only 10% of what they had just a few years ago. Out of 100% of coral reefs that were in Florida, the Florida coral reefs were beautiful. I mean, they created life. They sustained life. There's only 10% of them left.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What can be the result of losing the coral reefs?
Well, these are, as you may know, they're like breeding grounds for a lot of the fish and things that we rely on for food. And if, once you get that water gets too warm, what usually happens is they bleach out, which means they lose the cyanobacteria that helps them to, in a symbiotic relationship to get enough energy. And in Florida, the water's so warm, what I just heard is that it's not actually that, it's just killing them. It's just outright too darn hot for the species to survive. So they're going around trying to take samples of rare species to put them in a tank and preserve them. Because, we are in the Anthropocene. We are in
what does that mean?
Anthropocene. Geologists tell us it's a new era in our geologic timescale because humans are changing our planet.
Well, anthro having to do with man.
Yes, anthro-human, just like it's anthropogenic climate change. So when we look at the rate of species extinction, it's many, many times the normal rate. And when we look at ecology and how we survive those interrelationships that keep us healthy and allow us to live and sustain, whether it's getting oxygen because of the phytoplankton in the ocean or the plants on land or the rainforests, cleaning the air, we can survive without that. There is a true value.
There's so many things that climate change is doing to destroy our planet. I mean, I can go on and on about the melting Arctic caps, where the water has to go somewhere, and if it pours into the Atlantic or the Pacific or whatever ocean you want to pick, water levels are going to rise, and that coastal cities will be flooded. Doesn't it have something to do with the red tide in Florida as well, too? Is that?
I think there is, because of the warmer water, that there are issues with the tide. I know there's also a dead zone, in the Gulf of Mexico that's many, many times worse because of the nutrient enrichment, and the warmer waters is all driving those algae to flourish. It's just, again, when we look at, coral, I don't know if you've ever been to a coral reef, but I had the chance to.
Wish I did. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the ones on TV in Australia.
Right.
That are absolutely, the colors and the life is just absolutely beautiful. And I think they're losing their coral reefs too, aren't they, in Australia?
Some areas have, yes. And I guess if the bleaching isn't too bad, and sometimes they can come back. When the waters, change. But I think the concern is, of course, with this long-term warming that we're having, and also acidification of the ocean. It's not just about temperatures. Most of the CO2 that we put in the atmosphere has gone into the oceans, and that makes carbonic acid. And the real concern is, as the oceans are becoming more acidic, at some point those corals will not be able to make their reefs. The organisms that form their tiny shells of a carbonate material will not be able to do it.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned the red tide, before was another. It was another thing they were talking about because climate change. They used to call it global warming, and the reason they changed it is because it's not only the planet's not only warming, but it could also be extremes in temperatures and
Absolutely.
extremes. So the term global warming was become antiquated. Am I right? Is that what you
Yes,
believe?
it's you can't adequately describe it. It is not just about the fact that our temperature, here in Minnesota in the winter has warmed 5 degrees. Obviously, that's had huge impact, right?
Right.
But it is also the extremes. Our jet stream has changed.
Right.
And therefore, it's slower and it tends to get wavier. And what's happening is weather patterns are getting stuck. So that those heat waves that we've had, the heat domes over the Midwest, that's part of that.
Yeah.
Or the blizzard that the East Coast was getting weekend after weekend, a winter ago. That's a part of that, and it's kind of a new event that is still being studied to totally understand what's causing it. But there's a lot of data to assume that it is climate related.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you personally for your advocacy as far as the planet is concerned and our environment, because God only gave us one planet,
Exactly.
and we have to nurture it and take care of it. I hate to move away from this subject because I know how much passion you have for it. Well, maybe we'll touch on it again later, but I want to talk about the duties and challenges you've experienced being the caucus chair. Can you enumerate
The Environmental
some of
Caucus?
Yes.
Okay, so in 2014, a number of us were at convention, and there were other caucuses being recognized. And we kind of questioned, why isn't there an environmental caucus? It seemed unconscionable that with this big DFL party that we would not have a group dedicated to environmental issues and advocating for it. And so we got one started. We did it in about a year, which I was told was pretty miraculous, to get a constitution written and have elections. I was elected chair and served 6 years as chair. And we grew the caucus from that first batch of 25 or so people to 1,400 is our current membership, with about 200 that are active, which means they attend a meeting within the last year, a forum that we put on. And the challenges, well, we're statewide. So holding events where you are inclusive of people from all over the state, getting involvement. We've done pretty well getting people from CD8, CD2, CD4, CD5. We're a little weak in CD7 and 1.
Yeah, but I hate to interrupt you, but I'm finding this very befuddling, I guess is a good word, because the people up in the range area in the north, they're gravitating towards the Republican Party right now, right? But yet we are the party of to fight climate change, and farmers live up there, and their farms are at stake. Their livelihoods are at stake. Can you explain the dichotomy there? Why on one hand are they voting this way, but yet we're the ones that have their back, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's really tricky. There's a lot of issues. I think some of the areas up north and down in CD1 are a little behind us in terms of social consciousness, in terms of our awareness of LGBT rights and
so
diversity
basically
issues.
You're saying their hatred of LGBT is much more important than climate change is?
There's not one answer. There are also people that, have been brainwashed to think that we have to do copper nickel mining. We have to, exploit the environment at all expenses so that we have these jobs that we've had in the past. It's a tricky answer. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. And I can't figure it out either. But I don't know if you know the answer to this. I'm going to, ask you anyway. Copper nickel mining is very important to them up there. That's their thing. Is there a way to do that safely for the environment, or there's just
I'm so glad you asked, because this isn't, I didn't just start the Environmental Caucus along with others because of climate change. It's also because we need to protect our water. As Minnesotans, We
course, we need clean water, yeah.
value the right to live and recreate and enjoy our clean water, right, in our parks. And there is absolutely no example of doing copper nickel mining safely in a water-rich environment. It can't be done. And so the science, the data backs us when we say prove it first, show us that you can operate a mine for 10 years and then have it closed for 10 years without causing surface and groundwater damage. And they can't do it. They'll claim they can, but the data shows otherwise. And, we got a ban on this for 20 years in the Boundary Waters area, right? A federal ban. Thank you, President Biden and people like Betty McCollum that worked very hard for that. But we need to think about the interconnectedness of those watersheds. Lake Superior is very much in danger from copper nickel mining. The St. Louis River, which we've spent millions to clean up, is in danger. Now they want to do a talon mine on the St. Croix. The beautiful St. Croix River.
What's talon?
Talon would be a new mining proposal. It's supposed to be underground. They're trying to sell it as something small.
What about taconite mining?
Taconite.
Is that safe?
Well, we've done that a lot longer. They know more how to do it, but unfortunately, there are some taconite mines that where they're mining iron ore and they're taking it from rock that is higher in sulfide. And they are polluting the environment with that sulfur also. And their state just keeps licensing them, even though they're beyond that 10 part per minute limit. So, people tell us, oh, we have regulation that will protect us, and we have to very loudly say no. The regulations we have are not being properly enforced. And so we need to stand up and say, not here.
Okay, so I'm going on this subject a little longer than I wanted, but I find it's very, you have a lot of passion towards it, so I'm going to ask you another question. What I think maybe would be a good idea, I'm just tossing a ball in the air and see if you catch it. So up north, the big reason I think personally that they are voting the way they do up north is because these mines are providing them with jobs. And can we develop clean jobs, clean energy jobs, ways to give these people a livelihood, to make money for their families, rather than mining and causing water damage, so people are drinking poisonous water? Or do you follow what I'm saying? I mean,
absolutely, and the answer is yes, and it's being done, but we need more of it. I mean, part of the issue is we need broadband, right? We need border-to-border broadband, so people have access to internet. One of the representatives from ICD talked to the miners and their families about why they really were pushing this way of life, and it turns out when you talk to the kids, they've left and gone to the cities where they're doing high-tech jobs, right?
Right, yeah, that's true.
And they don't want to come back and work in the mines.
No.
And so there's like this disconnect between generations about what is really valued and what is wanted. And I want to push back on the whole idea a little bit that the whole northern Minnesota is pro-mining and there's, like, we got Jen McEwen was elected and serves and is doing an amazing job up in Duluth, right? So there are people, there's a group called Duluth for Clean Water, we've got Water Legacy, we've got Friends of the Boundary Waters. There are many, many groups that are advocating for clean water and for protecting our environment. And at the same time, renewable energy, right? So we've got a new solar plant up there that's going to open up. We have things happening like off-road biking in abandoned mines. So there are other things
Right.
that you can do to attract tourism and to attract industry. But again, it's going to take time and effort. And of course, I agree with my friends in the DFL unions that these need to be good paying union jobs.
I agree. See, this is where, you got to, if you want people to vote, for clean energy, for clean water, for clean air, you have to give them a reason of a job.
Yes,
where
and
they
training.
can go into that field and make money like they did before.
Absolutely.
And that's my thing. I think we need to put a lot more money. The state has a lot of money now because of the, what do they call it? Not the opposite of deficit. I can't.
Right.
The extra money.
The 18 billion, yeah.
The 18
but the 3 billion from this last session are going into climate.
Good.
And
Perfect.
so, our House Climate Caucus has done a great job advocating. And of course, on a federal level, the, Inflation Reduction Act is putting money into communities for these kinds of projects that can benefit everyone.
And the word was surplus.
Yes, thank you.
I had deficit in my head. I don't know why. Anyway, this is a good segue. We could talk about the Minnesota trifecta.
Yay.
Having 3 branches of our government being controlled by the Democrats, the DFL, we like to call them. What accomplishments would you say the DFL trifecta has made to make life better for Minnesotans? And I know there's a whole bunch.
Oh, yeah.
But in your sitting across from me right now, and I can tell you mine. But what are some of the ones that you really are so happy about?
Paid family leave comes to mind, protecting women's reproductive rights, the fact that we're a trans refugee state. I am a teacher, and I have, there are students who are going through changing identities or unsure and need to feel welcome and valued in our schools. And all of these things set us apart from our neighbors, right? We are becoming an island. We are becoming nationally a state to look to with these progressive items, putting money into infrastructure, putting money into education. As a public school teacher, I've seen year after year being asked to do more with less. For more and more things, we're asking kids and their families for money. And that's just not right. Not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody has that money.
What do you feel about the children having free
lunch?
Free
yeah.
lunch?
No, we just did a booth. Okay, I was at the Scott County Fair with my DFL group, Scott County DFL, from different Senate districts, and we did a corn poll. And people put corn kernels in, which thing was most important to them of all the accomplishments. We had 8 of them listed. And legalizing marijuana, recreational use cannabis was I think way up there, as was paid family leave, as was the kids came around and put the kernel in the free and reduced lunch. You don't want to be embarrassed because your parents forgot to put lunch money in, or because they're a little short that month. And you end up coming to lunch with just half a sandwich or something.
I'm hearing that again, how important this is to some families, because this could be the only meal some of these children are having all day.
We are supplementing a lot. We are sending meal kits home with them for the weekends, and resource centers open up to help too. And so it's sad, but there are things that we can do to help bridge that gap. Everybody needs to have food security in order to do the other things that are going to help them succeed, right? You can't learn if you have an empty stomach.
Correct. And again, I love Minnesota because of everything that's happening, and the LGBTQ community is thrilled because of all of these things they're passing. The conversion therapy thing.
Oh my God! Thank you, Hunter Cantrell, who started that movement, and then
that
they carried
passed.
On. Yes.
I think I mentioned this on another show where I had a friend who lived in West Virginia back in the day, and told me how to get to pray away the gay, they would put children, young boys, and I want to say children because they were pubescent boys, in coffins, laying there, and then people would line up from the family and from the community with the Bible in their hand and beating the child.
Oh God.
To beat the gay out. This is
God.
what they were going through. This was their way of converting. And it never worked,
Gee, funny thing.
Yeah, because you are who you are.
Absolutely.
Why can't people get that? And then this indoctrination and grooming BS that they're trying to push. Look, if anybody should have been straight, it should have been me, because I went to a Catholic school my whole life, always surrounded by people using this word that I don't like. It starts with an F and has an A and two G's in the middle. That word was thrown around like all the time, and it was like. And when I started to develop as a young man, I started to realize that I could be that word, and it was so self-deprecating to me. It made me feel, awful that nobody was validating me. I didn't come out because of that. And so here I am standing here at 63 years old as a gay man. So none of that, nobody indoctrinated me to make me gay. It was just something I always knew that I was. And you want to add to that?
Well, I'm seeing in the public schools where we're getting pushback from white Christian parent groups like Moms for Liberty, right? Hate groups.
What do they believe?
Well, the only way is their so-called, way of living.
So they're evangelical
type, right? Who are just, very much right-wing Republican thinking types. And so they feel like we're putting their little white Christian boy on edge because we have GSAs, because we celebrate Pride, because we celebrate Black History Month, because we call attention and value diversity. My Republican counterparts in SD 57 are totally against diversity and inclusion efforts. And it's just, all they can talk about is lower taxes. That's lower taxes.
Right,
and parent control. Well, we're a public school. We have to show our students and that we value and welcome all of them. So if we put up a Pride poster, that doesn't mean that we don't value our straight students, right?
Straight students are wonderful.
Exactly.
I mean, allies to me are, and I talk about this on my show all the time. If you're an ally, it means that you are not part of the LGBT community, but you support us because you believe in our humanity and the fact that we are Americans. We pay taxes. We do everything you do. We have families like you do. We love like you do. So why not just, even though you're a straight I respect you. I don't want you to have less rights.
No.
Obviously my whole family's straight. I mean, I don't understand why they think we are against them. They should be all in for this because then it means that everybody is part of the community.
Yes.
So.
And it's not just gay, straight. I mean, it's also religious. And so our public schools, I have students in my class that are Muslim, that are Hindu,
Jewish,
that are atheists, that are Jewish, that come from all different religions. And so they want us to embrace, the one way of teaching, or as a science teacher, that I should tell the other side of the story with evolution, which is, I just laugh, which story would you like me to tell? So, yeah.
But the thing is also, there are some people, they think that everybody in the United States is a right-wing Christian. And you have to realize, too, because I got married in a church. The Lutheran Church married us. So there are many churches in this country that are considered left-leaning churches.
Oh, sure. I'm in one.
Me too.
Yeah.
And there's also the Jewish community. I had a Jewish friend tell me this really quick. In the Torah, is that how you pronounce it?
Torah.
The Torah. They believe it's listed in the Bible. It's delineated that God created life when He breathed into human beings. Yeah. So when a baby takes its first breath, that's when life begins.
Yes. So
a Jewish person could literally go to the Supreme Court and say abortion should be legal for everyone because I'm Jewish and my Torah says life begins at first breath. What are your feelings about that?
Yes, I've heard that also from genetic engineering. People working on genetic engineering, the whole thing with, we're using stem cells in research. And it was a Jewish scientist who said, according to my religious beliefs, I'm not taking life. This is, pre-birth, so it is not an issue. And so we have to value everyone's opinion. And that's why we have separation of church and state, right?
Of course.
And
yeah.
we need to honor that.
So now we've come to the part of the show I like to call the shift. And don't forget to say the F, because otherwise we have problems. It's the shift.
Yeah, got it.
Yes. Where I shift the questioning away from, your personal journey in life and to your opinions about current events and things that are going on today. Are you ready for that?
Sure.
Okay, so now we're going to hear what you think about things. So let's talk about some of the things in the news, that are happening right now. Okay, so just so my listeners know, I had a bug, and I was supposed to do your interview and somebody else's, and I had to cancel. Remember that?
Yep.
And just because of, obviously I don't want to get you sick, and I want to get my other guests sick. So I did a rant, and I just sat here by myself and started talking about issues. So on my last rant, I talked about the newly approved education guidelines regarding the new Florida curriculum in middle school. That middle school teachers must teach students about how slaves developed skills during their enslavement that could be applied for their personal benefit. That's the quote. You can actually read that in the curriculum. Can you comment on this new curriculum promoted by Governor Ron DeSantis? What do you feel about that?
Oh, this is wrong on so many levels.
I know.
You can't change history. History is history. And you can ignore it and whitewash it, but you're doing a huge disservice because it's going to repeat itself. So when I read that, I thought of my personal history, that I have relatives who died in Auschwitz, that,
sorry.
I'll never know their story. Mm-hmm. And that would be like saying that it never happened, or that it somehow valued the Jews got something out of it. You know what I mean? To me, that's just an absolutely ridiculous statement.
What could have been the benefit from that? There is no benefit.
None. Just as there's no benefit to taking someone and taking them from their families and enslaving them and forcing them into labor. And by the way, they came with skills.
And
these were people, real people that had been doing jobs and had skills.
Oh yeah, you don't have to tell me.
Well, I'm just you asked, so you're getting it, okay?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, the same thing with Native Americans. I mean,
oh my God,
what we did to them. I mean, there's no benefit. They didn't get a benefit for. Did we? Maybe we taught them how to cook certain things or make,
No.
But that's not something you would want to teach when it comes to teaching Native American studies. You want to teach how they were moved, their families were uprooted, they were moved out, they were killed, they were
and
treated.
There's historical trauma that we have to understand as teachers. When you have a student, Native American, in your class, their families have experienced that, probably their grandparents.
Exactly.
And so, and as a teacher, going through education school, 76 to 80, and then getting my graduate study, master's in the 90s, no one taught me this. I was never told about that. I learned about it in SEED classes, seeking equity, diversity classes that I took voluntarily. Not everybody even knows this stuff, So it's like we also need to change our educational system so that we know the real stories.
Right.
And if we don't do that...
Yeah, we have to teach, exactly, Veda. We have to teach history the way it happened. So slavery happened. These are all the things that the slaves, remember, it was chattel slavery, so they weren't even considered human.
No.
What happened to the Native Americans, and explain what really happened. Don't say, well, the benefit they got out of it was, no, I don't want to hear that. The same thing when it comes to the Holocaust. There is no benefit.
No.
So all of these things that historically happened, we just should teach them, and don't give these little, codicils to say, to make the person that was the subjugator feel better, because
or to make us feel better, right? Like, oh, we're such a wonderful country, this wasn't really bad, and look how far they've come, right? We had a black president after all, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you hear. And
well, that's why we got Donald Trump, because we had a black president. That's what I feel anyway.
That was the reaction, yeah.
That was because when the pendulum swings one way, it swings right back all the way to the other side. So again, to my listeners, just so you know, slavery, if somebody tries to tell you there were benefits, there were no benefits. Nothing came out well when slavery was around. And we're trying to actually get out of discrimination against African Americans. It's even to this day, I mean, the things that are happening, and then the affirmative action thing. We could just go on and on and on. But I want to move on to the next question, because I have so many things. You're such an amazing guest. I want to, feed your brain, and you feed my brain. President Biden signed a proclamation designating national monuments to Emmett Till in Chicago, Illinois, Sumner, Mississippi, and Glendora, Mississippi. Emmett Till, nicknamed Bobo by his mother, and civil rights activist Mamie Elizabeth Till Mobley, was murdered. Emmett Till was murdered because he supposedly whistled at a white woman back in 1955. Mamie Till Mobley opted to keep her son's casket open. Mamie Till Mobley proclaimed, this is a quote, "I wanted the world to see what they did to my baby." Imagine being a mother, all right? Tens of thousands of people viewed Emmett's body, and photographs circulated throughout the country showing him the way he was. There was no makeup. They even said, you sure you want to open the coffin and let people see it? We could fix him up. No, she said no. I want everyone to see what they did to my baby. Would you like, I know this is just a horrible thing, but would you like to comment about the president, what he did here, and then what your opinion about this is?
Well, I was a Biden delegate in 2020 because he said he was going to heal America. And I think this is an example of Joe Biden taking steps to do just that. Mm-hmm. Nothing rights the injustice that was done to Emmett Till. And,
Nothing.
And George Floyd and Breonna Taylor.
You can
go on and on, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But we do need to recognize that it happened, and that call attention to the fact that we can go there as a race, as a human race, right? That people can be that cruel and inhuman. And maybe it'll make us think twice about, do we want to be part of that gang? Do we want to join that mentality? Or do we want to reach out and get to know our neighbor as ourselves?
Yeah, but
to
my
truly
question,
love your neighbor.
Yes. Now my follow-up question to you would be, will it make children feel bad about themselves, white children, I should say, because of what happened to Emmett Till? Because I would think, if I was a child, I would say, that was terrible, what happened then. I would never, ever dream of ever doing that or thinking that way in my lifetime. And it would probably make more healing rather than separating and causing kids to feel like they're feel responsible. Don't you understand what I'm saying?
I think we have to face up to what has happened.
Of course.
And that if it makes our white children a little bit squirmish, that's good. I think they need to realize the full potential of what humans can do, both good and bad.
Yeah, so it doesn't happen again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that mom really needs to be recognized as so many
I
other
love her.
leaders. I had the opportunity
God bless her.
to shake John Lewis's hand on the Capitol grounds.
Oh, no.
And it was cool. I could have done the whole picture thing. I'd love a picture with you, Mr. Lewis, but I was with friends, and it was more like, may I shake your hand? I was just so in awe. So, there's both sides, right? We have these people that, like the mom, who is fighting for freedom and for a fair and just society, and so people really know. And then we have people like John Lewis who say, you got to make some good trouble and crossing that bridge, regardless of the police that were beating them back. And we can't stop. We can't let up our guard ever.
Yeah.
Because there's too many hate groups out there that want to take over. And so those statues, I think, are really important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I really praise President Biden for doing this, because this happened, how many years ago? 1955 to now.
Yeah.
I couldn't even add it. It took this long for us as a country to recognize that what happened. And you know, as an added tidbit here, Rosa Parks, who lived during that time, and this is a true story because I had heard this from someone that's a historian. Rosa Parks heard what happened and saw the whole thing about Emmett Till, and that prompted her to sit in the front of the bus.
Oh, yeah.
That's what she was just had it at that
was
point.
it.
That was it. I'm done. You know.
Wow.
If you can kill our children,
Yeah.
then you're worth. Then I have to do something about this. And good for her. You know. I
Absolutely.
mean. So see what I mean? It took something like that. This woman putting her child in a coffin without any leaving it open, letting people see this is what they did. And then you have people like Rosa Parks who comes along and says, oh my God, that's horrifying. So I'm going to do something now.
Exactly.
And then, so love spreads. It's like,
Yep.
love travels is a good way to put it. You know, it just, one act of love goes to another act of love. Because, you know, civil rights is love. The fact that you can respect somebody's journey and respect them as a human being, that's love to me. You know?
It is humanity at its best.
Exactly. So now we're going to go into a little darker stuff here. not as dark as Emmett Till, but anytime I talk about the former president, to me that's very dark. But the former twice impeached president received a target letter preparing him for another imminent indictment from the Justice Department. Why are all these indictments being ignored by the majority of Republicans who continue to support him and donate to his campaign? Now, all this money that he got from these people, from his supporters, supposedly $40 million are going to lawyer him up, you know, so that he can defend himself against these numerous amount of indictments that are coming his way. What's up with that? I don't know. I'll throw the ball at you.
Why did people follow Hitler? I mean,
I don't know.
to me, it's the same. He's fascist. He's a con man. He's a crook. He needs to be locked up.
Yeah, but I don't think he will, though. He won't be locked up.
Well, I hope so.
Because if you or I did half the things he did, we'd be in jail already.
A long time ago, right.
Yeah.
So I hope that it's enough for the majority of people, Americans, to wake up and say no. But I know we have a problem with what people read and what people have access to, too. I mean, if your only news outlet is Fox News, you're getting a very different story than if you're looking at a breadth of news outlets, right?
Right.
So I think there are people that have been brainwashed to believe, just as the Germans were brainwashed, right? Excuse me.
Broaden your horizons. Watch different news outlets. Be open-minded. You know, because if your fellow Americans are saying this guy is trouble, he's doing X, Y, and Z, why would you not? I mean, it's all over the news what he's doing. I mean, he's even saying now that they're doing this because they don't want you, and they're going to point it at them.
Right.
They don't want you to have your freedom. Like he's going to give them freedom. Sure. I don't know how, but
get them arrested.
Good luck with that. Anyway, as you know, I always address issues that influence the lives of LGBTQ people, Americans, and LGBTQ people around the world on my show. A couple of weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled on the side of a Colorado web designer who said she will not design any websites for any LGBTQ weddings. Will this decision open a Pandora's box, giving more and more businesses carte blanche to refuse service to our community? And can you give us your thoughts on this decision in general?
Kind of going back to the lunch counter days, isn't it? Where you could only serve white people, right?
Right.
The blacks had to go somewhere else. I mean, to me, that's what this is. It's discrimination, plain and simple, and it does not belong in our country.
Yes. Well, that's a very good way to put it. And it's funny because the minute I've always said this, the minute you treat one group any differently than you treat another group, that makes that group not equal.
Exactly, and you have to ask yourself, who's next? When are they going to come for me?
Yeah.
You know?
First they come for us, then
Right.
they come for them, then
Exactly.
they come for you.
Exactly.
So you have to make sure everyone's given the same rights, and the fact that I can actually go into I mean, I don't know where the it's a slippery slope, basically, is what I'm
Yes.
saying. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, because maybe I can go in with my husband. We want to have an anniversary party, let's say, and we want to cater it, and we go in and we say, my husband and I want to, you to cater our, and they turn around and say, we don't do gay anniversary. Things like that can happen.
Absolutely.
So, and when you go into commerce and when you're out there providing a service, you're supposed to provide the service for everybody.
Yes.
And if you don't feel right about it, you can always contract it out to someone else that can help you. Do it. If you don't want to do it personally, you can. Every business has someone that they contract out to do. Sometimes their workload is crazy and they can't.
It's not your specialty.
Right.
You could say
So you
something.
could, or you could just say, I can get you help. I can get someone to do it for you. You don't have to make a federal case out of it. This is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And on a lighter side, for all of us, we can ask, do you object to doing cakes for gay marriages or whatever? And if they say yes, then you don't do business with them.
well,
Even
yeah.
if you're straight, right? It gives us a kind of a marker, a barometer to say these are jerks. These are not people I'm going to give my money to.
Yeah.
Even if I don't fit who they don't want to.
And every business you can online now that we have these reviews that you could review businesses and whether they're a good business
Right.
or they're
I won't go
whatever.
to Chick-fil-A. How about you?
And you could and you can say in the review, they refused me and my husband, or whatever you and your wife,
Yep.
service because we were gay.
Yeah.
And then those people will read that and they'll say, uh-oh, that's not a place I want to go, you see. So that's another way to do it. But she made a federal case out of it. She could have just said, you know what, we'll get you a web design. But see, the whole thing, again, I keep saying this, she was not sued.
I heard it was all made up.
She was what's the word? She was trying to be proactive so that nobody would sue her.
It was a made up story.
And the fact that the court took it, was just
really, Supreme Court.
absolutely ridiculous. And to piggyback on that, the court also ruled against implementing affirmative action when making college admission decisions. Can you tell why you think this court is so out of touch with the majority of Americans? Now, just so you know, affirmative action has given a lot of African Americans the opportunities that they have today. Otherwise, we wouldn't see as many African Americans in certain fields. So what are your views on that?
Well, as a public educator, I understand there is a gap in high school achievement and college entrance and all kinds of things across different socioeconomic and racial groups. And so absolutely we need to recognize this. We also have to recognize that our tests were designed for certain groups and to hold certain groups back. And so when you look like at the SAT test, I understand that was designed for white male kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's just not fair. Mm-hmm. And so we need to also get rid of that whole legacy thing where, my dad went to this school or my mom, so that I have first dibs, right? All of that is discriminatory. Mm-hmm. And so I think affirmative action still has a place in America. I think we still need it. If we get to a point where we don't have discrimination in our institutions, great. Let's get rid of it. Mm-hmm. But we do. We have to just face facts. Yeah. That certain groups are being discriminated against. And so in order to make a richer university, diversity brings enrichment of ideas and thoughts,
That's
right?
amazing,
and creativity that you would not otherwise have if you limit groups. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a big mistake.
Yeah, me too. And I always talk about this on my show, that when you become part of a marginalized community like I am, you start to understand everybody else's struggle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I am trying to pursue equality just like African Americans are, just like Native Americans are, and you can run down the list. And that makes me much more a believer in inclusion.
Empathetic also.
And white Americans who are white, Christian, heterosexual, and those people that believe in inclusion as well, those are the people that you have to give them a huge hug, because they're actually more empathetic, because they're starting to feel like, this is not right, and we need to become a more inclusive country where everybody is part of the American fabric. Otherwise, it's because I remember Lincoln reading in school. Do you remember the quote from Lincoln? "A house divided shall not stand."
Shall not stand, right.
And that is so true. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, and the strength of our country is immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
So we can't forget that and suddenly
Right.
pretend we're anything else.
Yeah. True. Anyway, before we close out the show today, Veda, I can't believe all this time passed by so quickly.
Me either. It went very quickly.
Yeah, didn't it? Because it's fun. When you come on the Downright Upright show, you have a lot of fun. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although there are issues that aren't fun. I have to, I have to make sure I say that. But we want to put those issues out there so people understand that this is happening and we want to do something about it. So that's why I address those issues. So before we close out the show, is there any issue that I haven't covered that you'd like to address, or any future event you'd like to promote before we close the show? So either an issue or something you want to promote, or both.
So promotion-wise, the congressional district that I'm in, Congressional District 2, will have our fall gala fundraiser October 22nd. And Congresswoman Angie Craig, our wonderful Congresswoman, will be there.
Oh, wow.
And we'll be raising funds that'll be used to help keep CD2 Blue, elect Democrats up and down the ticket.
What's the date on that?
It's October 22nd. It's a Sunday night, and it'll be at Next Chapter Winery. It's a really fun venue down in New Prague, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
So watch for information about that.
Yeah, and they can go on your website too to find that as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What's the website again?
I'm going to guess it's cd2dfl.org, but might be MNDFL. I will have to look that one up. I'm sorry.
Okay, you can Google it,
You
right?
can Google it. Yeah, we're
All
out
right.
there. And then personally, where I live, we have a company called Niagara water bottling company out of California that wants to use the city of Elko New Market's municipal water system to bottle and sell water, right? So taking the groundwater that's basically ancient mined water.
It's very clean
Well,
water,
it
right?
has to be actually treated with reverse osmosis because there's radium in it. So it's not like you just pump it out and use it. You have to use reverse osmosis. But they want to bottle and sell it in single-use plastic water bottles in places like Costco and Sam's Club here in Minnesota and Wisconsin and some out in the Dakotas. And we object. We object to this use of our land and our water. We object to 2.4 billion plastic water bottles being sold when we know a number of those will never get recycled and are just helping our petroleum industry, right, fossil fuel industry. It's just an affront on many, many levels. And so I'm with a group called No to Niagara, and you can Google us, you'll find us all over the web, that has objected. The city council, unfortunately, has approved pretty much everything it takes for this bottling plant to come into the community in their new industrial park. The last step is the DNR. Our State Department of Natural Resources would have to approve increasing their water appropriation to like 310 million gallons a year in order to at least get this water bottling plant started, and then they'd need to come back in the near future and ask for more to be able to get to full capacity. And so my hope is that people in the DNR will pay attention, and that residents who know about this, it was on the news several times, will write in and let them know, please pay attention, and this is not a good use. We have predictions from Met Council and others that there'll be water shortages, that we're going to have to look for alternative sources of water in the South Metro in many communities.
Oh, boy.
We might be looking at trying to pump in river water, much more expensive than using your groundwater. And so we have to be a little bit forward thinking. We have the headwaters of the Vermilion River start right in our community, right near my house. I'm worried about my private well running dry, as are others. So there's a whole lot of issues with it, but I would just encourage people to look into that if you haven't already heard of it, and let your elected officials, let the DNR know that you think this is a very bad idea.
Yeah, and you and I, was speaking before we went on the air here about how when we grew up, we had bottled water, real bottles, glass bottles, and milk was in bottles.
Reusable, yes.
I remember Mom would, she would, put there was like a crate in the front of the house with old bottles that were reused bottles, and we'd put them in the front, and then the milkman would come, replace that crate, and give us a new one with bottles, filled with milk. And the same thing with soda. We had this company, they're defunct now, but they were called Hoffman. It was a soda company. You lived in New York.
I don't remember that one. No, I grew up in Wisconsin, but we would take our used waters back to the trading post, or our used pop bottles, I should say, or beer bottles, whatever it was, back in a case.
Yeah.
To the trading post where we bought them, and they would give us a deposit, right?
Yeah, and glass is made of sand.
Yeah,
it's not
it got washed and reused, so
it's not an expensive endeavor. But the point of Hoffman, I was going to get back to Hoffman, is a soda company.
Yeah.
And they had root beer and black cherry and all these flavors. I remember loving it, and then again, the same thing. We would have the crate in the front of the house, and when the bottles were empty, they'd come replace them and give us full bottles, and it was not a problem. Like you said, the petroleum industry has just taken over this country in a way where, and not in a good way. Because, even the streetcars we used to have in New York that I remember my mother telling me stories, we used to have streetcars, they ran on a rail, and you would, it was a wonderful way of getting from point A to point B. And then the petroleum industry said, no, we got to rip those up because they wanted people to use their cars so that you could use gasoline. So I was there, I lived through all of these changes, and I don't like them. I just don't. And
well, single use, just, it doesn't make sense anymore.
No, of course not.
We were not real smart about it in earlier years when it was a matter of convenience and it seemed wonderful, but now we know you get a reusable water bottle or you get a big jug and you use it. You don't have to, there's no reason, none for that.
Correct.
So,
well, unfortunately, Veda, we've come to the end of the show today. I am so sad because I could go on and on with you talking. I mean, you just full of information. And this is another reason why I love doing this show, because I learn so much from my guests. I really do. I mean, you guys are, all of you that have been on my show as guests, I just want to thank each and every one of you for enlightening me about things that I really never thought about or didn't know about. So for more information about Veda Kanitz, and how you can become active in Senate District 57, go to dfl57.org, or you can write directly to Veda at chair@dfl57.org. So thank you, Veda, so much for coming to the Downright
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh,
this has been wonderful.
We could do it again soon if you want.
Sounds great.
I've had recurring guests. Actually, Austin was one of my recurring guests, so I'd love to have you.
She's great.
Isn't she amazing?
Yes.
I love her to death. And to the listeners, thank you for spending time with us today. And please look out for more of the Downright Upright Show in the future on am950radio.com/events/Philip with 1L. And thank you again for supporting the Downright Upright Show. Everybody out there, the more clicks and the more likes and the more subs we get, the better it is. And you mean everything to me, and I want to thank you all out there for your love and support. And this is Philip Anthony saying thank you for tuning in to the Downright Upright Show, and be safe, and ciao for now.